with the upcoming release of Lightfall, our mods are about to be changed forever. With that knowledge, a lot of our current builds in the game aren't going to perform the way they are right now. So I wanted to start a series leading up to Lightfall where I make a build with every single class and subclass that we currently have in the game. These builds are not going to take advantage of any combat style mods and heavily focus on fragments, exotics, and aspects. Normally, if you use these builds with mods equipped, it is just the cherry on top. And of course, before you start doing anything in Lightfall, you can obviously take a look at the new mod system and try to insert what you think might work. This is just supposed to be a clean slate and give you all an idea of what is some of the strongest stuff in the game right now for each of the classes. If anything changes in the future, I will make an updated video talking about what I think could be better. And like I said, if you're interested in every single class and subclass, be sure to check out the channel and give the series a watch. And this one, I want to go over the Void Hunter, which is honestly one of the best team supportive roles in the entire game. Void Hunters are known for debuffing enemies with things like their tether and even their melee ability, but with this build, we're going to have access for all of our abilities to weaken targets whenever we need them. They also have a playstyle of making your teammates invisible and getting them through areas, or you can trade that playstyle to be a little bit more on the offensive side yourself and volatile everything on the battlefield. Overall, the Void Hunter is still a very top tier subclass, and it is extremely strong for taking into things like a day one raid. All right, so jump right into it. I'm going to start off with our exotic, and that's going to be Falcon's Halberd. If you want to run Omnioculus for the more team supportive visibility playstyle, you can run this, but for this one, I like to play more into the volatile version of it and just causing havoc on all your enemies. Now, this has the exotic perk See Me, Feel Me. Your void weapons gain volatile rounds after you emerge from being invisible. When you're invisible and defeat a combatant while using a finisher, all your weapons gain bonus damage. You and your nearby allies gain a reserve overshield and improved class ability regeneration. These reserve overshields can be deployed by using a class ability. So now we've gotten through that whole book of a description. The main thing you want to take away from this is when you come out of being invisible, all your void weapons are granted volatile rounds. This is very good for at clear and just doing some extra damage to bosses if you are running a void power weapon, but it also does have the other benefit. If you get a finisher while you're invisible, you'll get a weapon damage bonus. It is not that good. I would highly recommend just not really worrying about that, but a very cool part of it is that you and your nearby allies will get that reserve overshield, which can be deployed when they use their class ability. That is very good for adding survivability on this supportive hunter based playstyle. You're just going to give all your teammates an overshield pretty much all the time if you are playing into it correctly. But like I said, the main appeal of this exotic is just to have permanent volatile rounds up whenever you want them. And the way we're going to achieve that with our subclass is with the aspects of Vanishing Step and Stylus Executioner. Vanishing Step is extremely simple. Dodging makes you invisible. You can just dodge, you go invisible, and then you can come out and you have volatile rounds. If you want to go invisible, get a finisher, you're going to get those reserve overshields. It is just a great on-demand tool. If you need to go invisible to do anything based on this exotic, you are good to go with that. Now, Trapper's Ambush is also one you could take, but I honestly don't like taking this one because it only gives one fragment slot and it requires to be on your melee cooldown. So this is just your dodge. It has a very fast cooldown, and I like to take Marksman Dodge because it does have a 34-second cooldown. This did get nerfed, but it is going to get changed again in Lightfall, so in Lightfall it'll be even better than what it currently is right now in the game. Now, the other aspect is Stylus Executioner. So if you defeat a weakened, suppressed, or volatile target, it grants invisibility and true sight. And then after performing a Stylus Executioner, your next melee attack while invisible weakens targets. Now, the second part of that doesn't matter too much, but you can take advantage of it a little bit. The main thing is once you defeat one of those targets, you go invisible. Since volatile's on that list and your exotic is granting you volatile rounds, every single time you get a kill, you go back invisible. This will then again reproc your Falcons to reset your volatile rounds timer. And this is how you can have infinite uptime of volatile rounds. And it's also very, very good for survivability because you're just always invisible for the most part and nothing will shoot you. Remember, this also does work with weaken, so that is going to play a huge part into our build as well with things like snare bombs. So you can actually throw this snare bomb to weaken targets, which is really cool. This will not only again make you go back invisible, but if you need to just debuff a boss, your melee can do that for you. Now, speaking of debuffing bosses, I also like to take Deadfall. If you want to take Mobius Quiver for some extra damage, you can, but I just like Deadfall because it will last a little bit longer, it has longer range, and it also applies a very hefty debuff to whatever boss you're shooting at. If you go into a DPS phase, just shoot this beside a boss and you just have a lot more damage. Now, those two aren't the only ways we're going to be weakening enemies. If we get into our fragments, I'm going to be running Echo of Remnant, so your lingering grenade effects, Vortex Grenade, Void Wall, and Void Spike, and Axiom Bolt have increased duration. Now, we're going to be running Vortex because it is a very easy to use grenade, and it's also going to play into our next fragment, Echo of Undermining, so your Void Grenades will weaken targets. So now, since your Vortex Grenade will last a little bit longer, you can keep that weakening on your enemies a little bit longer, and now your grenade, melee, and super will all weaken targets, which again can make you go back invisible to grant those volatile rounds. else. Plus, just having this many weaken effects available for things like champions and obviously for things like bosses, it is just very, very good. Now, Echo of Obscurity, so finisher final blows grant invisibility. Now, this one you don't need to take as much. I like playing into this one because it does play into the exotic. You get that finisher, you go back invisible, you have all those reserve overshields granted, and that extra weapon damage boost if you want that. But again, if you want to swap this out for literally anything else, you can do that. I just like to play into that survivability of the exotic with those overshields. Then finally, Echo of Starvation, so picking up an orb power grants Devour. Orb is going to be extremely strong in Lightfall to grant armor charge. This also is going to get changed, so you can pick up Void Sprites, will grant Devour. Devour is extremely strong. You get max health when you get a kill, and you get a chunk of granting energy back, which is good for ad clear and also making sure you can weaken whatever targets you need to. Now, stats for this build, I honestly just try to get an even distribution. The main thing is you just want 100 resilience to get that damage reduction. This will be 30% in Lightfall, but I just have 50 in everything else because you want to have constant uptime on all your abilities, so just keeping them pretty even is nice. But if you want to put all your points into one stat, take something like mobility so you can always have your dodge up, it's nice, or even something like discipline so you can keep your grenade up. Anything will work. Even if you want to throw in something like recovery, that could be good, but just be aware, since you are getting healed after every kill with Devour and going invisible with Stylus Executioner, you don't really need that much survivability because it's pretty hard to kill you as is. Now, weapons with this build, always remember to run a void weapon so you can proc those volatile rounds. I like to run the Tidal because it does have the Origin Trait classic contender, so your final blows with this weapon will grant class ability energy. You don't have to run this. Any void weapon would do extremely well. I like this because it does have stats for all, one for all on mine at least. You cannot farm this because this is a Guardian Games weapon, but with these two perks combined, you're kind of just spreading volatile and getting a bunch of buffs all at the same time and getting your dodge cooldown back. But if you want to run the Funnel Web, Unforgiven, Graviton Lance, Doom and Chelt, just literally any void weapon, it will be very good for this. And now I also like to run a Riptide because this does have Chill Clip on it. This will allow me to stun Overload and Unstoppable champions in Lightfall, since slow stuns Overload and Shattering will stun Unstoppables. This is just a very versatile gun, very, very good, and it's also just very good in general for taking out majors. What's really cool is that when you have volatile rounds proc on your weapons, this will actually also stun anti-barrier champions in Lightfall. So simply running Gerfalcons with a void weapon also is intrinsic anti-barrier. So this means now you have all three champions on both your weapons, and you don't even have to take a champion mod. Now for heavy, just like these past videos, I just have a Sleeper Simulant equipped right now. We don't know what the meta is going to be, so definitely just be sure to keep out for what the DPS meta will be. But as a small little tip, if you are playing into Gerfalcons, would highly recommend putting on a void power. Anything that's going to be in the meta, make sure it's void, because that means your volatile rounds will just also do some extra damage, which is really, really nice. Now for mods, I have a Harmonic Siphon, so rapid weapon final blows with a weapon that matches my subclass type will create an Orb of Power. Orbs of Power again will grant Devour. Also in Lightfall, they will grant armor charge, so this is very beneficial to have on. And I just have a linear fusion ammo finder just to match it with my heavy weapon I'm running. Obviously, you can swap that out for whatever heavy you choose to run. Now I also have a submachine gun loader just to reload my SG a little bit faster, and a melee kickstart, so whenever I throw my melee, I will get some cooldown back. You can swap this out with a grenade kickstart, whatever you want to, but since you already have Devour, I don't think it's as needed. But this will now just let your melee come back a little bit faster, so you can always have that weaken up as much as possible. Always remember, run these resilient mods. Things like Energy Diffusion Substrate will be an unlockable perk in Lightfall if it does come back around, so make sure you keep the permanent ones on so you can keep that survivability up as much as possible. Now I do have two absolutions thrown on here, so whenever I pick up an Orb of Power, which I'll be making all the time anyway, I'll get cooldowns for all my abilities. Again, like I said, you want to have as much permanent uptime on these as possible so you can always have your weaken, and absolution just really does help that out a lot. And then speaking of that, I am running a distribution, so it reduces all my cooldowns when I do my dodge near enemies, which is very, very nice. Now I do have a 1-2 finisher on here equipped, so whenever I finish an enemy or restore my melee ability, this is very good for draining my super energy because it does require 1/6 of super energy. The problem with Echo of Starvation, if you do have your super full, you cannot pick up the Orb of Power to grant yourself Devour. So with this, you can actually just use some of your super energy to get that orb proc back. Now this is potentially getting changed in Lightfall to require an armor charge now instead of actually using your super energy. But I also think with Lightfall, when the new combat style mod system comes out, since it does require orbs to get those armor charges, you're always going to be able to pick up orbs 24/7 anyway. So I think running an Echo of Starvation is still going to be very good. But for now in the game, having a 1-2 finisher to always proc your Devour is nice. And again, the Void Sprites will also proc this in Lightfall. So I really think Void Hunter is about to get even stronger in Lightfall, which is crazy to think about
because it is playing heavily into your class ability as well, which means you can just proc the Falcons a lot more easier with this build. So as a recap, really all you're doing is just dodging so you can proc volatile rounds, and you just have access to weaken things with all your abilities, and you're just permanently going invisible over and over again with Silas Executioner. That is honestly the entire build. It doesn't require anything special to play. You just simply hit one button and you're pretty much good to go. But that is the build. If you all would like to try it out, I will have a dim link to it in the description below. And of course, if you all enjoyed and found this video helpful in any way, consider subscribing, drop a like, turn notifications on. Also, if you'd like to join my Discord or follow me on any of my socials, all of that will be linked in the description as well. But just know watching this video is way more than enough, and that every single bit of support from you all is truly appreciated. Thank you all so much for watching this one, and have a great day. Peace.